man. This time on Engine Masters, we are gonna look at the power difference between identical heads, one iron and one aluminum. I gotta put this thing down. All other things being equal, what makes more power? A cylinder head made of aluminum or one made of iron? That is the question that we're addressing on this episode of Engine Masters, and it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, aluminum heads are far lighter than iron heads, and that's a huge performance advantage. But some people believe that it's possible for an iron head to make enough more power to overcome that weight difference. Now, why would that be true? We will start with facts. Depending on the materials in the casting process and how the metal is blended, the aluminum head transfers heat roughly 5 to 6 times better than iron. Many people believe that because the iron head maybe retains more heat in the combustion chamber, that makes more pressure and that makes more power. That is the key to many of the beliefs about iron versus aluminum heads. Now, I've never done this before, but I'm gonna run through some actual comments from my Instagram account about people's beliefs between these heads so that you can think about this as we go on through this episode. Here's the thing about heat in the combustion chamber. It's very common. People believe you could run more compression with an aluminum head. This guy says, aluminum makes more power because of cooler chambers, and you must raise the compression ratio in order to prevent a power loss. Aluminum makes more power because cooler chambers draw in more oxygen. Aluminum dissipates heat, adding to better atomization of the fuel load. Remember, I'm just reading these. These are public opinions, not mine. Aluminum has more resistance to hot spots to reduce detonation. Aluminum allows more ignition timing to make more power. Iron makes more power because of valvetrain stability. It's more rigid than aluminum. Iron is better for low compression. Aluminum is better at high compression. Iron is better for torque. Aluminum is better for horsepower. Aluminum just plain looks cooler. That guy, I agree with. The rest of it, we're gonna be testing here on the dyno. Now, the merchandise involved is our good old Blueprint 3D3 small block Chevy. It's got just under 10-to-1 compression. It makes about 470 horsepower. The cylinder heads that we're using are both from Dart Machinery, and they assure us that they are identical, other than the material that they're made out of, and the fact that one is drilled with a tapered seat spark plug, and the other one uses a gasket. Now, to verify this, Steve Brulé tested them on our Superflow flow bench because he wanted to see how the air actually passes through both heads. And I will tell you that from casting to casting, you can see some variances, even if they're the same unit from the same manufacturer. And sure enough, we did see that the iron head flowed between 3 and 8 CFM more, depending on what the valve lift was. So in truth, our very slight advantage in this test is going to the iron head. Everything else is the same. One is the Iron Eagle 215cc inlet runner. The other one is the Pro 1 aluminum head. They both have as cast runners. But does one make more power than the other? We are gonna jump through flaming hoops to find out. The first ones we're gonna test are actually these iron heads that are here on the table, and the second setup will be those aluminum heads right there. Here we go, guys, the test that I've wanted to do forever. And actually, you and I did this back when I was at Carcraft or Hot Rod roughly 20 years ago.
We did?
Well, you guys were dynoing 20 years ago? Yeah, you were like only 14.
That's about right. What's your preconceived notion about what's going to happen between iron and aluminum?
I think the aluminum head's going to make more power even though it flows a little less.
Because?
Because of the heat saturation in the cast iron, especially when we purposely heat load the cylinder head and combustion chamber.
And how about you?
I'm with him.
Exact same thing.
I'm going to go to aluminum every time.
A lot of people say the iron head should make more power because it retains heat.
And we used to run engines at 180 degrees at the drag strip too.
Yeah.
You know.
And I just really don't think they considered the time factor because a combustion cycle event happens so quickly that the heat dissipation is not going to have that much influence cycle to cycle.
Didn't you just say the opposite of that a minute ago?
No, I didn't.
You thought it was heat dissipation?
Aluminum dissipates heat faster than cast iron. But I really don't think that equates to a difference in power.
Do you believe the aluminum head makes more power?
He's confused me so much now. I don't know what I think.
That's why we're here for data instead of guessing. So first up here, we're going to do a regular straightforward dyno pull as we always do at an acceleration of 300 RPM per second and see what our baseline power is. Here's our final power numbers for our baseline on our 383. It made 464.2 pound-feet of torque at 4,700 RPM, and at 6,100 RPM, it made 469.2 horsepower. Now, the thing about this is we've completely reconfigured this engine with solid roller lifters, different cylinder heads, and a single plane intake manifold, and it makes exactly the same horsepower and way worse torque. I think the main key to all of that is really the intake manifold.
Single plane intake. Seen it too many times for it not to be, but yeah, you put all that work in and we just killed a bunch of torque.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got our baseline. I'm really interested in doing stuff to put more temperature in the cylinder head. I'm thinking a slow sweep, 100 RPM per second, to just let the thing sit there and groan and build up heat and find out if it makes any kind of difference.
Turns it into about a 30-second pull.
It's not your engine.
I know.
He doesn't care about it at all.
All right, here we go with our 100 RPM per second. Now remember, the dyno normally pulls at 300 RPM per second, which is faster acceleration rate. Now we're going to slow it way down because what I'm looking for is really putting a load on the thing and watching that temperature climb.
This is going to be good. Look at that heat soak. It doesn't even want to shut down.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That iron head could have developed a glowing spot. On that 100 RPM per second slow pull, we made 466.9 pound-feet of torque and 464.6 horsepower. Now we're going to go ahead and compare the 100 RPM per second pull to the 300 RPM per second pull.
Ooh, wow.
I see something.
I see something too.
Yeah.
Do you see what I see, Steve?
I think I do. We've had this discussion.
Yeah, I think so. What we're looking at here is the red line is 100 RPM per second, the slower pull, the greater load, the more heat. Black is actually the faster pull. Down here, we're looking at inertia. It's making more power with the slower acceleration run because it's not accelerating the mass of the engine. But then, how come it crosses over at about 52, roughly where horsepower and torque cross over, and it starts to get worse up here because it should maintain that same gap about here? It's actually because it's getting hotter.
We learned a lot of this stuff doing this show. I mean, some of the stuff that we're discussing right now, we all learned right here, which is really cool.
Now we're going to do the steady state test. We're going to bring it up to 4,700 RPM, which is peak torque, and just park it there until the oil temperature goes to 210 degrees. See that? It diesels when we run the thing hot every single time.
I shut it off cold and it was fine. Now I shut it off hot and it wants to run and run and run.
That's got to be a hot spot in the chamber.
You call that auto ignition.
Auto ignition.
Yeah.
Yeah, which means firing with the spark plug not firing. Yeah.
There's something hot in there.
When we shut the thing off after doing one of these pulls, we see that it diesels or runs backwards or auto ignites. It won't shut off. And we're guessing that's because of hot spots in the iron head. So we started that test at 474.2 pound-feet of torque, and it fell off to 468, which is reflected in the horsepower that started at 424.5 and fell down to 418. So now all we have to do is cool off these iron heads for half an hour because they retain so much heat, and then we're gonna go switch off to the aluminum. I think we should make Brule pick up the iron heads.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna have Troy pick up the iron heads while I watch.
All right, here we are. We're gonna take off these iron heads. We're gonna have to find a volunteer to heave them off. Probably gonna be Pork Chop over there. And we're converting to aluminum.
iron is a lot heavier than aluminum. But how much? We'll find out right here on this handy scale. And iron, this is the tail of the tape, 56.5 pounds. Man, that is heavy. Ugh. Aluminum, 25.36. The weigh-in tells me that we've got a difference of 31 pounds and change.
Oh man, aluminum heads, way lighter.
You betcha. Way lighter, but are they way more powerful?
Tech tip action, I'm going to show you about pushrod guide plates. You need to use a hardened pushrod in conjunction with guide plates that are required on most aftermarket heads. The thing about the guide plates is that they are guiding the pushrod. Watch what happens when I put the rocker arms on and I've got that guide plate loose. The guide plate, when moving side to side, makes a huge difference as to where that roller rides on the tip of the valve. What you've got to do is go in and make sure that they're perfectly centered. And so the way Brule does it, he gets it centered on one valve, takes the rocker arm off, tightens that stud, and then puts it back on, and then the pushrod guide plate will be held, and he can go in there and tighten his other stud. Aluminum heads are installed. Now off camera, we fired this thing up and did a bunch of pulls to do timing sweeps. We really wanted to find out if the ignition timing advance was going to be the same or different with iron versus aluminum heads, because just moments ago, I looked at my Instagram post and the guy said, you can put more timing in an aluminum head to make more power.
It may tolerate more timing, but it won't necessarily want more timing.
You mean the aluminum head will tolerate more timing if it runs cooler?
Timing is detonation limited, how much timing you can actually physically put in. Or maybe the material can have an effect on detonation, but the engine may not want that much timing and make less power. Yeah.
We tipped it over where it dropped 3 or 4 horsepower straight across the board with timing, but yet it wasn't detonating.
Okay, so we've got it fired up, tuned up, and we're ready to show you the difference in power. Here are our numbers with the aluminum heads: 468.9 pound-feet of torque, 470.7 horsepower, which doesn't mean a lot until we overlay the power chart with the iron heads. Here goes.
Whoa.
Boom. Wow. Black line is the aluminum head, red line is the iron head. Look at the difference below the 5250 torque and horsepower crossover. It is huge. And then up top, it's much less of a difference. It's down to 1 or 2, but honestly, the advantage is still to the aluminum head.
Yeah, it's amazing down here. There's 20 pound-feet difference.
But the question is why? Why would aluminum head make more power below peak torque? We're looking at the graph of the airflow through our carburetor hat, and sure enough, you can see that the aluminum head is moving more air down at the bottom end. Not as much as you might guess based on the difference in the two curves.
Quite a bit of torque difference for what we're seeing here of, 8 CFM difference.
8 CFM is pretty significant down that low.
Well, and we know that up top, oddly enough, the iron head is actually flowing more than the aluminum head, but they make exactly the same power.
The iron heads do have a flow advantage on when you test them on the flow bench. They're just slightly better, whether that's production variation. I mean, they're very close to the exact same configuration, but they did test at a higher flow, slightly.
I think we need to go to the 100 RPM test and see if we can see any differences there. The heat soaker.
Oh yeah.
The engine killer. we pull the thing much more slowly, we end up with 473.3 pound-feet of torque and 468.6 horsepower. So the real story is when we overlay the iron head in the same kind of test. Boom. Wow. Black line is aluminum, red line is iron. So aluminum wins once again with a weird little warble going up here at the top.
But overall, very similar to what we were seeing at 300 RPM per second, because the low end torque advantage is still there and then it narrows towards the top.
Does that tend to disagree with the theory that the aluminum dissipates more heat out of the chamber because at 100 RPM step, we're giving it more time? It's not really showing a difference in performance though. These are the two different acceleration rates compared. At the 100 RPM rate, it actually is moving a little bit more air.
Which is where it made more power.
We found when we did another episode with the intake manifolds, the heat didn't really transfer into a fast-moving column of airstream.
It's just like if you have a spoonful of soup and you go, it doesn't cool off. But if you go, it cools off. It's the same exact thing.
I do that whenever I have hot soup.
Do you? How about coffee? You do the coffee too?
Oh, yeah.
What we keep talking about with this temperature versus airflow thing is that we discovered in a prior test when we were looking at coolant temperatures, hot versus cold, that the colder the chamber, the more airflow you can get into it, because when the chamber is hotter, it's a higher pressure area, so the differential between atmospheric and the chamber is much higher. And so colder allows more airflow, and that's what we've been looking at here. So far, aluminum heads is still on top. Now we have to do the bring it up to peak torque and gather data till it hits 210 degrees of oil temperatures. All right, here we go with our 4,700 RPM steady state test. Okay, so we started at a higher torque number. With the aluminum heads, we started this test at 480.8 pound-feet of torque, and with the iron head, it was 475. But then it falls off actually at a greater rate. The aluminum head fell down to 468, which is exactly the same as what the iron head did. And it looked to me just, anecdotally, not data-wise, that it dove faster in truth.
But I don't know what to attribute that to.
I wonder if it starts with a cooler combustion chamber just through the idling process and all that. Even though the water temperature is the same, the combustion chamber itself is not as hot.
Right.
It's not retaining the heat like the iron head does all the way through the material.
Because there's more time for it to pass out, and the iron retains it, but the aluminum, they ultimately both reach the same temperature. So we went from 142 degrees to 159, just a speck hotter than we did with the iron head, which was 138 to 156. But you're right, heat transfer goes both ways. So it gets up to the same temperature faster.
Quicker.
Yeah, which is something that people don't consider. So when they say you can run or should run more compression with an aluminum head, I can see how driving around on the street at low throttle position, idling, stoplight to stoplight, that's true. At wide open throttle, from what we're seeing here, I would say it's not true.
Ultimately, they're going to converge in temperature over time and load. At a high heat load, it'll reach an equilibrium.
This is not what I expected to learn on this one.
But it's kind of bearing out what we thought we knew once anyway. I mean, what we learned on other episodes and stuff, which is kind of good. I mean, it just verifies the same test and the same information, the same data again.
It's great when physics repeat itself.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't
when they
it?
don't, we've done something wrong. I think the conclusion is obvious. Aluminum heads. It's really all there is. You're done here.
Thanks.
Thank you for your service, Steve Brulé.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Look how happy Brule is.
Oh, I am happy.
Yeah.
Well, iron versus aluminum heads.
I came into this test with some preconceived notion, and I'm sure generally people do.
Oh, I have to admit that I had the same thing. But what we're gonna do now is compare our preconceived notions with everybody else's. For the first time ever, I'm gonna take the comments that I got directly from my Instagram page that I read off at the top of the show, and we're gonna challenge each one of them as we, compare it to what we learned here.
Okay, hit me.
Much of this is based on people's belief that iron heads run hotter and aluminum heads run cooler, which we will give you as a granted in some circumstances. But when you say things like, when switching to aluminum heads, you must raise the compression ratio to prevent a power loss. True or false?
False.
False. Yeah, we absolutely did not see that. Aluminum makes more power because cooler chambers draw in more oxygen molecules.
I would say that's true up to a point, maybe where there's a time factor at lower RPM. And we saw that because we did pick up a little bit of power at the bottom of the curve.
Brule and I did this exact same thing in 2005. And in that test, the curves absolutely overlaid. There was no difference whatsoever. Aluminum has more resistance to hot spots to reduce detonation.
I would say that's probably true. I'm a believer.
And here's the very last one, and the single most popular thing that we hear people say is that iron heads make more power because they retain more heat and put more pressure in the combustion cycle and therefore make more horsepower.
And I've never bought into that.
I don't think there's a circumstance where more heat makes more power, honestly.
Yeah, not really.
So power-wise, I feel pretty good with that conclusion. I mean, on many tests, I say caveats like, well, in this application, things may change, things are different. You can't always say it. In this case, I will say iron heads do not ever make more power than aluminum heads. Why are the other reasons why iron is terrible?
The elephant in the room there is obviously the weight.
They're ridiculously heavier. Okay, that's our final wrap up on iron versus aluminum heads. I think everybody is unanimous. Just buy aluminum if you can possibly afford it. More power next time on Engine Masters.
If you want to talk about basketball, Dr. J, sure, he played in the ABA, but for style, the moves, you didn't have basketball play like that until Dr. J came on the scene. And one more thing, Freiburger.
What? I'm ready.
When you run a guide plate, you've got to make sure that you have a hardened push rod.
You can tell that, by the way. I said it earlier.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh. Sorry, Freiburger. I should have known that you had handled all the details.
ignites the sky. Feet on the ground, but I'm ready to fly. Shadows can't hold me, I'm breaking free. This is the rhythm of who I'm meant to be. Feel the pulse, let it take control. Heartbeats racing, it's a thunder roll. Electric fire running through my veins. Dancing wild in the pouring rain. Turn it up, let the energy rise. Flashes of light in my electric eyes. Can't stop moving, it's a fever trance. Every step is a rebel's dance. Feel the pulse, let it take control. Heartbeats racing,